Hello, thank you so much for joining this conversation and making the time for our New Wolsey's symposium on rant. If we can introduce ourselves.
Hi everyone, my name's Hannah Quigley. I'm a white woman in my 40s. I'm not sure if the light allows you to see the freckles on my cheeks. Today I'm wearing a cozy green jumper, got a white background, and I've got short hair. And I was associate director on Oliver Twist, which was a Leeds Playhouse and Ramps on the Moon production.
Hello everyone, I'm Kerry Michael. I'm a he, him. I'm a Cypriot who's just turned 50. It's okay, it's fine. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and I'm in my front room and I've got some books behind me and I've got dark hair. And I directed Tommy, which was a New Wolsey production.
Hello, I'm Nikki Miles-Gordon. I am a white woman with bleached white short hair, black rimmed glasses, wearing a blue jumper. Behind me, a white bookcase full of loads of books.
Oh, Nikki, I just lost you there on your role that you've played.
Associate on Tommy.
Associate director on Tommy. Great, brilliant.
Hello everyone, my name's Amy Leach. I'm Deputy Artist Director at Leeds Playhouse, where I directed Oliver Twist, which is our Ramps production. I'm a white woman with my hair scraped back in a bun, wearing a stripy t-shirt, and again I've got a white bookcase full of books behind me.
Hello everyone, I'm Peter Rowe. I'm a 65-year-old white man with greying hair, wearing glasses and a grey shirt. I'm sat in my office at home with a load of clutter all behind me on a notice board and pictures. And I was co-director with Jenny Seeley of the Threepenny Opera, which was the show that kind of gave birth to Ramps.
Hello everyone, I'm Rob Hasty. I'm Artistic Director of Sheffield Theatres, and I've directed Much Ado About Nothing, which is this year's Ramps production about to hit Ipswich. I'm a white man with a shaved head, wearing a yellow jumper, and I also have a bookcase to my left. I can't tell if is it the left or the right of your screens. Anyway, I'm sitting next to some books.
There is a book scene definitely going on, and a mighty fine knitwear collection as well. And they're very jealous of your yellow jumper. I'm Douglas Rintoul, and I'm the Chief Executive of the New Wolsey. So I'm quite new to the whole Ramps project, which is I'm going to be asking you questions really for the benefit of people who are experiencing this recording, and also for myself. So I'm a white male in my 40s. I'm wearing black rimmed glasses. I have short hair. It's greying. As Zoom always seems to pull out the grey a little bit more. I'm sitting in an office with a printer and some documents behind me and a red wall. So I'd really love to get your kind of experience of preparing for working on the Ramps project. How did you prepare?
I'll be brave, go first. I think, so when we did Oliver Twist at the Playhouse, it kind of came, we were the fourth Ramps production. That's not including the Threepenny Opera. And so I suppose we were quite lucky in a way that there'd been those other shows that had gone before. So Kerry and Pete had already tackled, and other directors of theatres had already tackled these shows. And obviously also building on the amazing work that it was built, the whole project was built out of Grey Eye and amazing work within the disability arts sector. So I think we were quite lucky that we had lots of learning to kind of read, to talk to people about, to kind of, to meet with a whole range of artists, people who've directed those shows before. And so that was a really massive part of kind of setting off on our particular journey, and getting to learn from such an array of people, and particularly disabled artists in that journey. And I suppose one thing that we kind of, really started to do was actually to start kind of exploring aspects of what makes up a Ramps production on other shows. So it wasn't the kind of first time that we tackled lots of the things, so the kind of all the different integrated access, working with a whole array of of actors with different access requirements and communication styles, we kind of really got practicing as an organisation over that time, as well as talking to so many people. So that was a big thing about the kind of preparation journey that we went on, was really just that amazing, both kind of packing on muscle, kind of practicing, kind of trying different elements where we weren't trying to do it all at the same time on shows, but also getting to learn from and kind of stand on the shoulders of so many other artists that have gone before us, both within the Ramps project, but also, like I say, within the wider disability arts community. So that was kind of, a big aspect of how we started to prepare. Hannah, you were there in those early stages as well. Is there anything you want to say about the preparation?
Yeah, I think the research and development is so important, but one in developing relationships with different people and understanding, there are different approaches and different people have different requirements or enjoy working in different ways. But I think particularly with Oliver Twist in relation to sort of within the writing, trying to really celebrate sort of both the visual performance for those people who might enjoy the visual language, and then the oral language sort of within the writing, and just see how to, from as early on as possible, how they can complement each other and balance within a whole scene and within the whole play, so that they're not, competing against each other, but complementing each other. And I think seeing that potential realised early on in R&D was really helpful in taking that confidence into rehearsal when you have to sort of just get on and do it.
We go right back, Pete, because obviously you were at the beginning of that journey, so there was a lot of learning to take through from previous projects. How was that preparing for quite a pioneering project at the time?
Yeah, I mean, we it had grown out of quite a few collaborations that the New Wolsey Theatre had done with Grey Eye, co-productions, and also Jenny and I had co-directed a Richard Cameron play called Flower Girls. So we had experience of working together as co-directors. I think for me as a director, the biggest learning curve was the communication within the rehearsal process. So inside the rehearsal room, trying to make sure that you were communicating clearly to everybody with their range of different kind of communication skills and needs, gave a different rhythm to the rehearsal process. I think that was the biggest learning curve for me, to try and make sure that everybody was on the same page and that everybody understood, and the communication methods within the rehearsal room. So BSL translation and projecting text up onto the wall so that people could read it. And I'm used to working quite fast and snappily in a rehearsal room, and I had to adjust my rhythm to make sure that everybody was included at every step of the way. And that, preparing for that and having the right forms of communication within the room or within that ensemble, it's a much bigger circus than some shows that usually happen in a much shorter space of time, I think.
For all of us as theatre makers, is that storytelling is at the heart of it, in the choice, and then in the casting, and going into that creative process. And I was very fortunate, Rob, to be in your rehearsal for that day, and it was really inspiring to see that the level of creativity that was happening in the room because of the artists who were in the room, the different perspectives. What did you learn from the creative process, Hannah?
For me, it links into the creative process. Something that we did, I think it was perhaps on our first day, Amy, and I'm not sure where it came from as a question. Yeah, so you can allude to that. But it is asking the question of the company, what do you need to do of your best work? I think it's such an important question that feels that it could be removed from creativity, but it's about building trust, and trust comes from, freeing people to feel supported to give of their best work. And we asked that question on the first day of rehearsal and talked, in pairs and then in groups, and shared what people wanted to share. and it's a practice that I've now taken forward into my work, but I would also now bring it in much earlier in relation to my own thinking. And I think we all do this, or we should be all doing this, is what might the people that we want to work with need to do of their best work? And that might be, more time, or, a BSL consultant to work with, or, the different consultants that you might want to work with on a project to support the specialism in the language that you're working in.
Really, really great point. Carrie, is there anything? Yeah, great.
It's all been said, but the only thing I'd add is I think there were a lot of directors in our room, which was a really positive element. The musical director, the creative consultants, the choreographer, the associate director, everyone took the floor at various points in the process, and that felt like the right way of doing it, letting other people lead on their bit, and then it all works together. And I think that's the collaborative process of a rehearsal room, if that's how you want to run a rehearsal room, but particularly on a ramps kind of show, because not only is it and a musical, so all those people were kind of in charge at various points, which kind of in this scenario it worked.
I think that's really fascinating, and certainly, Rob, when I was watching your room, and just how many people were in the room, and how many voices, how many perspectives, and the managing that is hugely demanding. And obviously Carrie and Peter, and I noticed it in your room, Rob, too, is just how calm the room was, and how calm you have to be. And I think that's such a brilliant point about the precision of communication in a way that we might not be as precise sometimes, but that the room demands that.
Yeah, and I'd love to. I really enjoy talking to other directors who've had this experience in general, but about what leadership means in this context. The experience I've had before that it was most like was working on a musical. Carrie said, you've got so many other directors in the room, you've got so many people whose expertise you are relying on, and the constant sort of dance of who's at the front of the room, if you like, or at the centre of the room at any given moment. So, and a lot of it feels like that element of director, which is entirely about facilitating, about convening the conversation and sort of holding the room, and calmness becomes a complete essential in that. We made sure that our BSL director and our audio description director were given the status of director in the room, and separate to consultants that we might bring in, and that felt really, I don't know how others have organised their creative teams, but that felt really, by the end of our process, completely essential to have had that for us, to have had those directors working alongside, shoulder to shoulder all the way along.
It's interesting about Carrie.
I think that's a really interesting bit of the evolution of ramps, isn't it? Because I think in hindsight, absolutely, our two creative consultants were directors, and they directed chunks of that show, which I had no hand in. I just trusted them. But at that point, at year 2 or year 3, they were consultants, and now we've moved them into being directors, which is absolutely right in terms of the evolution of our learning.
And lots of people are picking up on the point of how they're different as artists. And now, having gone through the process because of what the process demanded, Amy, how are you different?
How am I different? Well, I've spoken about this before, really, because I suppose Oliver Twist as a project genuinely has the kind of build up to it, and then the kind of everything that's happened since. That project has genuinely changed my life and my practice, like, completely. And I think partly because it's just opened up so much new possibility. It's opened up so many more pools of amazing actors and artists to work with. Partly because, as Hannah says, I think that kind of, I like to hope I'd always held quite a safe rehearsal space and quite an egalitarian rehearsal space. That's definitely kind of has always been my ethos. But I think working on the Ramp show asked of me to go so much further in that. So yeah, asking those questions on the first day about what people need to do their best, I'd never been quite so explicit in that, and now I'm kind of like, you know, often berate myself for not having been asking those questions for like, you know, many years beforehand. So I think in terms of like process, I think it's really made a massive difference. I now ask those questions of every rehearsal space R&D that I'm in. I think it's given me a whole load of new tools, like I say, and it's just the range of artists and actually friendships. I think one of the things that has happened is it's become quite personal. So like in the end, like if I want my mate Ben to come and watch my work, I now need to make it accessible for him, or, you know, I've got to it's become really personal, and I think that's been a really massive thing. And I think like we've talked about already, that paradigm shift from it being like something that's good to do to something that is just like, why haven't I been doing this my whole career? Why haven't I been thinking about these layers? And because of the kind of amazing discoveries it's opened up in terms of viewing plays, viewing characters, viewing possibility within stories, within the ways we tell stories, you know. And it's really hard. I think one thing we should probably all recognize is like doing the ramp show is epic and like head-meltingly difficult. But actually it's like, what an amazing challenge as a director, right? Like we our lives are built on having to solve the impossible. Like, how do we make that character fly? How do we, you know, convince an audience there's a monster on stage? It's no different. It's the same skills that we're using, and that has been just really thrilling. So yeah, like it's completely changed. I can't look at any work that I make now without thinking about all of these different aspects. So yeah, it's had a massive impact on me as an artist, and I think also on the organisation that I work with. You know, like it's really shifted the whole organisation being part of the RAPS project. Yeah.
It's just what keeps coming up again is the opportunities and the possibilities within how we tell stories, and how the stories that we tell, the lens that we look at it. I think that's the embedded access is seen as part of the language, as part of the creative language that unlocks possibilities. The kind of sensory, Peter, you're talking about the kind of uniqueness of the theatrical experience for those who are in it, making it, but also for the audience. And certainly having too much ado, that it is absolutely the case. It's a really unique, very, very special, honest, beautiful event. Nikki, just about your process, having gone through a RAMPS project, how are you different, having gone through that journey?
I think my journey with Tommy was an interesting one, having coming into it with already the experience of making creative accessible work. Having been an actor in the kind of first Grey Eye and New Wolsey collaboration of Flower Girls, which Pete talked about, to then moving into kind of this, you know, having assisted Jenny on kind of Blood Wedding and House of Bernarda Alba, and then becoming associate director. So I think for me, I brought a lot of knowledge, and with that knowledge came some frustration, if I have to be honest, in met with occasional sort of barriers with regards to the access that we were putting into the show, but it also enabled me to be the kind of, you know, a bit of a go-to for some of the disabled performers. If they were struggling with bits and pieces, I became that sort of confidant, as it was, somebody that they could bring stuff to, and I could then talk to Kerry about it, or whoever it was in relation to. And a positive thing as well is it enabled me to work on a bigger show, to be the director that did the ins at all the venues, to go through those technical rehearsals, to give those notes. And it was a musical. I'd never worked on a musical before. I hate musicals. So for me, that was a proper sort of, you know, an amazing challenge. But I learned so much by working with Kerry, and just with the entire team, to be fair.
Yeah, Kerry.
Right, I think I just want to add to what Nikki's saying. I think one of the most interesting things was that the thing about the frustration that Nikki had, because she was a veteran of working in this kind of way and we weren't, and it was about us having to kind of learn. And that one of the things about ramps was, and whether that's still the case, is about getting the mainstream to learn and get better at what it does, and that learning is of these other institutions and that sharing of knowledge, and so therefore we were having to go to a pace where we were all we're trying to pick up on stuff that actually other people had done before, but we had to learn in our own way. And that was one of the biggest learnings, I think, for us for us as a group of creatives that had disabled and non-disabled people within it.
Nikki, kind of touching on something that I wanted to ask next is because obviously it is all still learning, and ramps by no means is the kind of perfect model. And I mean, you're already doing this, Nikki, but I just ask everyone else, is that how do we go forward as independent artists or as organizations without the full support of ramps? So the ramps isn't there for everybody, and hopefully it will have another iteration. I wonder what your kind of key takeaways would be in terms of advice for independent artists who might be working on a smaller scale or in organizations that don't have that amazing support that ramps gives. What should I be doing now going forwards as the new rules within our produced work that might not have the full support of ramps? Nikki?
I think you just got to do it.
Just do it.
There's no reason, there's no excuse not to anymore. And I think you'd be surprised how many smaller scale artists are actually doing it. It is, I always say, it's like Field of Dreams, isn't it? That brilliant Kevin Costner movie. Brilliant, maybe not, but that thing of if you build it, they will come, and you have to continue to build it, keep building it. Audiences and artists will come. So yeah, just do it.
Let's do it. Kerry?
Absolutely. Nikki's absolutely got you. And to add on top of that is not to forget these are other languages, these are other colours in the palette. It's about access, but also it's about having a different way of telling a story. So the creativity behind it underpins it. I was getting quite a lot of I want to put BSL in this play. Great, but why? Is it an access thing, or is it a storytelling thing? And making sure we don't do all this exotic stuff because it's exciting and in vogue. What's additional can you do in terms of how do you tell a better story with these other languages, with these other elements? That's the cherry on the cake for me.
Amy?
Totally agree with Nikki about just doing it. I do think we just have to say we're doing it and then make it happen and find a way. And I think it's about when we start really thinking of it as art, the artistic layer, as opposed to something that's like good to do, that's when it shifts. Because actually, if you needed a movement director for a show because it was going to be heavily movement based in your vision, or there's a whole load of fights in the show, you wouldn't go, but we won't have a fight director. It actually, it's just about prioritizing it within your process. So I think committing to doing it, having a go, keep having a go, learn, talk to brilliant deaf and disabled people about how to do it, work with them to make it happen. But I think there's always ways, we always find ways if we need to make it happen, if it's the art that we're fighting for, I think. And sometimes, I've done things where like, I wanted to put audio description into Macbeth that we did early this year. I'd been offered that I could have, I think it was 13 actors. So I said, can I have 12 actors instead? And then I'll use that money to go towards an audio description consultant. That, it's where you can kind of trade off. Or actually where on another show I've gone, do you know what? There's not a lot of movement in that. I come from a bit of a movement background. I'll do my own movement direction, and that means we can have BSL consultant. And so it's just make those trade-offs, because actually if it matters within your artistic vision, you will find a way. There are always ways, I would say.
Brilliant, great endpoint. Thank you so much. It feels a total privilege to be in this Zoom call with all of you. How lucky am I? And I'm sure this is going to be incredibly helpful for anyone tuning into this. Brilliant. Thank you. I really, really appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.